Hello, Miniverse. This is the You Make Me Sick podcast. My name is Andrew Stewart. I am your host. This is our first voyage into the Miniverse. I'll be on the Kirk Minahan network now. Had the podcast up for a while. It's a podcast where we normally talk about infectious diseases, microorganisms, things that can make you sick. Hence the title. But going forward, we may shift that a little bit. So I'm expecting a little bit of feedback, suggestions, maybe even some collaborations from current Minifans here in the Miniverse. So you might ask yourself, what does a podcast about microorganisms that'll make you sick, little pathogenic viruses, bacteria, fungi, all that fun stuff, what's it have to do with the Miniverse? Well, I thought about that for a while too. I've been a Minifan for a really long time. Going back to the days when Kirk was first on EEI. Loved the Kirk Minahan show. Loved it from a distance for a while now. But recently thought maybe I'd throw my hat in the ring here and just try and get on the network and see what comes from it. So I started thinking, how can I incorporate this kind of passion of mine to talk about things that'll make you sick, anything from bacteria all the way to heavy metal toxicity, even radiation poisoning, and really incorporate that into the Miniverse. It actually isn't that hard to associate a lot of these ailments, illnesses with the Minifans. Pretty easy to do. I think going forward, it'll actually probably create a relatively fair amount of content just from past experiences from members who have been on the Minifan, in the Minifan universe, or on the Kirk Minahan show. And I'll even throw a few examples out there right now. Just to kind of get the ball rolling and kind of let you know, specifically what you can expect kind of going forward with what we might be talking about. So we'll start with our friend Justin Trudell. Good old Justin. We saw about a year ago just how filthy Justin's car is. I love Justin, a big Justin fan here. But, you can't deny the fact that if his car looks that bad, you can't even fathom to think what his bedroom probably looks like. I feel bad for, I think it's his grandfather that he lives with, but I imagine his grandfather never goes in there. The floors, his bed, there's probably all kinds of remnants of spilled Mountain Dew, unfinished pizzas, although who are we kidding, Justin probably doesn't have much unfinished food in the room. So with years of dirt and debris and buildup, that's a perfect breeding ground for all kinds of fun little microorganisms. Yeah, we could talk about bacteria here. There's probably some of that, but I'd rather talk about mold and fungus.
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
So molds themselves typically aren't extremely dangerous. If you're immunocompromised, they can be. For most of us, that's not a problem. But mold can still present problems. If you have asthmatics can have issues with it. In fact, inhaling or even touching mold spores can actually cause a person to become allergic to the mold itself. This can also, as I said before, kind of trigger asthma symptoms. Causes shortness of breath, wheezing, coughing, people with known allergies or who have kind of gained these allergies from interacting with the mold. And what about fungus? That's a perfect breeding. I think old Mountain Dew, that nice sugary tackiness on the floor in a moist, cold, or even dark area, like Justin's probably underneath his bed or in between his car seats, under his floor mats. Fungus is a bigger problem. According to the CDC, more than 75,000 people each year are hospitalized in the U.S. with fungal infections. Granted, a lot of these probably aren't, from areas, in their houses. At the same time, though, they can present problems. And there were at least 7,000 deaths in 2021 related to fungus. So maybe, Justin, you want to, clean up a little bit if you haven't already. I could be wrong. Your room may be pristine, but if it's anything like your automobile, which is usually a reflection of kind of how people live, you might want to clean a little bit. How about Montante? Montante, my friend. I like you as well. You're a good dude. You're fun to listen to. You're pretty entertaining when you're on the Minahan show. Love it. But after a long night of drinking, you're out. Maybe you're puking a little bit. You pass out. You wake up. You're pretty hungry the next morning. You rediscover that half-eaten Subway sandwich just kind of sitting on the counter. Didn't really get to finish it. You're pretty hungry right now. You go and take a bite. Well, not so fast. Good way to get food poisoning. The CDC, again, they estimate that about 48 million per year get sick from foodborne illness. I could easily see Montante having done this in the past. Probably old pizzas, subs, chicken wings, wherever he can find laying around. In addition to these 48 million people who get sick from a foodborne illness, usually salmonella or campylobacter, about 128,000 are hospitalized and close to 3,000 die. What's even more interesting is after being out for only 2 hours, bacteria can actually start to double in growth rate on food that's left out. There's specific foods too that usually have a higher propensity to cause these illnesses. So there's definitely raw fish, raw chicken, which most people aren't eating, usually not a problem. But fruits and vegetables that have been out too long, and also just deli meats in general. Deli meats in general are one of the biggest sources of food poisoning in the United States. Anywhere from listeria to, like I said, salmonella and campylobacter. Very, very common foodborne illnesses. So, and I'm not trying to just single out Montante here. I know there's a lot of Minifans who like to indulge. Like I said, if you're like me, you'll usually get some food out. Sometimes you finish it, sometimes you don't. The next morning it looks awfully appealing, especially if you're hungry from the night before. So my Minifriends, just try and avoid that stuff and try and get some fresh food. So how else can these microorganisms affect us? They're everywhere, guys. All right, it's their world. We're just living in it. Let's take the recent case of Mr. David Cullinane. Norovirus, Dave. Oh, norovirus is nasty. Nasty gut virus. So, as Dave experienced, causes vomiting, diarrhea, fever, all kinds of fun things.
It's a bowel movement.
Norovirus, so there's an estimated 685 million cases of norovirus every year throughout the world. And about 200 million of those are in cases of children under 5. Which begs the question, Dave, why did you send your daughter to school the next day? I know she wasn't symptomatic, but norovirus is actually one of those viruses that has a relatively high asymptomatic spread rate. And a lot of these outbreaks that happen, they're actually at daycare centers and schools. So, Dave, maybe next time when you get sick and they've identified it, do a little research before you start sending your family members to places where they could infect other people. I love you, Cullinane, but sometimes I don't think you think things through all the way here. Norovirus, in and of itself, also causes 200,000 deaths a year, and 50,000 of those are from children. Thankfully, here in the United States, we really don't see that high a rate. We actually have, if it gets to the point where somebody's ill enough, where they're getting to that point, we can go to a hospital, get IV fluids. It is a virus, so there's not really any treatment for it other than just supportive care. But that being said, norovirus, still pretty nasty. And Dave said he got it, I think were you at a wedding, Dave? I can't remember what it was. But it's not uncommon to actually have catered food events be the cause of these spreads of norovirus as well. There are some statistics here that are taken from several hundred norovirus studies. These statistics found that a total of 54% of foodborne transmission came from these kind of catered events, and that another 35% were in food service settings. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. It is a fecally, orally transmitted virus, so there are other ways. I know Dave's proclivity for, I believe it's rim jobs on his Google search. That could certainly lead to getting norovirus, analingus. Definitely, if you're going to do it, try and be safe about it. And just know the risks of possibly getting one of these entero bugs and suffering the consequences from it as well. So how about our friend Kevin who calls in? God love him, little Kevin. Kevin, we don't know, if Kevin has some kind of developmental delay, or maybe there's something else in his past that kind of led to this, just how Kevin presents himself. Is it possible that when he was a child, he was exposed to lead? Were there paint chips that he decided to eat when he was younger?
Did you eat a lot of paint chips
Kevin,
when you were a kid?
It is possible that you're not responsible for how you are today, but it was your environment that actually caused this. It should be noted that with lead poisoning, especially in children, the number of IQ points lost per unit of lead taken in actually increase more when you're a child than as an adult. So if he was exposed to lead when he was a child, there is a really good possibility it could have lowered his IQ substantially. Now, again, I don't know. Maybe, Kevin, this is just a front that Kevin's putting on, and he's some kind of super genius who just is very curious about people's sexual habits. At the same time, there may be a correlation between lead poisoning and Kevin's, I don't know, if you'd call him just delayed, or if he has something else going on.
I like them French fried potatoes.
Tom Shattuck, hopefully this doesn't affect your kids either. I know you've supposedly had your house de-leaded, which is good, and I know it's expensive too, but it's not worth having your kids grow up with severe neurological deficits. So to that point, lead poisoning, something pretty serious. We do have an episode on that, lead toxicity, which hopefully we'll be launching on the network as well. And then what about our friend Steve Robinson? Oh, Big Steve. Big Steve is out for a nice leisurely drive up in Maine, sees something on the side of the road, doesn't know if it's a bag or carcass. So what does Steve do? He pulls over to investigate. Steve thinks it's a bag. It's not. It's actually a carcass. Being the curious type that Steve is, he goes to explore a little bit further. He kind of looks at the carcass, finds it interesting, decides to pick it up and dance with it for a short while. Unbeknownst to Steve, this carcass had rabies. Now, rabies, though usually outside of the body, dies pretty quickly. In a dead animal, it can actually survive for up to 24 hours. Poor Steve now has rabies. Problem is, Steve's not going to start to show symptoms for a few days, and once that happens, it's lights out. Rabies, if you can't get your vaccine before you start to show any kind of symptoms, is just about 100% fatal. Poor Steve now is stuck with a rabies death here in America, which doesn't happen very often, but if he just would have left that carcass alone on the side of the road, maybe he could have avoided that. We do have an episode on rabies as well, something else hopefully we'll post soon. Interestingly enough, with rabies, and this one goes out, this is for you, Menners, there's no rabies in Australia. There's other Lassa viruses carried by bats, because bats carry every fucking virus out of the planet. But no rabies in Australia. Here in the United States, every state with the exception of Hawaii has rabies cases. Pretty well controlled for right now, but outside of the U.S., rabies is still responsible for up to 70,000 deaths every year, and most of these are actually attributed to feral dogs that have been infected with rabies and then bite people, and a lot of those happen in India. So thankfully here in the U.S., pretty well controlled, but rabies is still nasty. It's not something you want to experience, definitely not something you want to get. So if you're playing bag or carcass, just remember to never get up and touch and or dance with the animals. And how about our friend Tim in Canton? Tim, very funny, great dude, the #1 Minifan. I think everybody can agree on that. Recovering really nicely, it seems like. I imagine he was stented when he went in for his heart attack. Procedure is great. As someone who's been in healthcare for almost 20 years now, I can tell you that, even up to 10 years ago, people would stay in the hospital for a lot longer for these procedures. Thankfully, Tim got out pretty quickly, seems to be doing well. That's great, because unfortunately these days, being in the hospital doesn't always have great outcomes. More now than ever, we're seeing multi-drug resistant organisms pop up in the hospital setting. The longer you're in the hospital, the greater chance there is you can get some kind of hospital-acquired infection, which can prolong your stay and even lead to death. There is some statistics on this as well. Like I said, thankfully, Tim was able to get out. Seems like he's doing well. Hopefully, he doesn't have to spend too long in there. Hospitals are really disgusting. So it was, last year, the CDC estimated that 1.7 million infections are acquired within the hospital. And from that, 99,000 deaths happen each year from those 1.7 million infections. So anytime you go to a hospital, try to stay for as little time as possible. Like I said, I've been working in the healthcare industry for a long time. Hospitals, there's a misconception that because you go there, even though they clean them often, it's, you have a congregation of sick people passing germs. A lot of times, sanitation, as clean as hospitals try to keep it, is just subadequate. So hospital-acquired infections, we kind of get into these multi-drug resistant organisms on the podcast a bit. It's in the healthcare world something that's becoming more and more of a hot topic, just because antibiotics are being overprescribed and just trying to figure out a way to kind of defeat some of these bacterial infections that we really are running out of choices for. One of our episodes, we talk about bacteriophages, which are actually viruses that are used to kill bacteria, and how that's kind of on the forefront. It's been around for about 100 years, but hasn't been used in a long time because of antibiotics. And now that we have just more advanced technology to actually manipulate some of these bacteriophages, there's more talk about those being used in the future to fight infection over antibiotics. And last but not least, let's talk about STDs. I know that you poor Min cells out there probably aren't getting a lot, but there are a lot of Minifans who do pretty well. I've seen some of the ladies at the show. This isn't just for the men either. We cover a variety of STDs on You Make Me Sick as well. Anything from syphilis to the herpes. Haven't gotten to gonorrhea yet, but I'm sure we will at some point in time. So, always be safe out there. But if you're paying for sex, you make sure your sex workers, wrap yourself up, stay protected. I am not anti-sex work. I think that's fine. People have to make a living. I just want to, be safe about it. Know the risks, and definitely we can help you get informed on a variety of different ailments. And, while we're on the topic of herpes, even Kirk Minahan himself has been unable to avoid the herpes virus. He's talked about it many times on the show that he had shingles. So shingles is varicella zoster. It is herpes simplex 3 virus. It is a herpes virus. Same one that causes chickenpox. Problem is, shingles, especially in adulthood, and if you're really old, can actually be quite dangerous. It's super painful, but can be deadly in older adults. Thankfully, there's vaccines. We've yet to do an episode yet on shingles, so maybe maybe in the near future we'll discuss that. But we do have a couple of episodes, our herpes series, where we discuss mononucleosis, herpes virus 1 and herpes virus 2. So cold sores all the way to the fun genital sores. So genital herpes. Yes, Minifans, I know that not a lot of fun to think about that, but herpes is pretty common. Still affects about 22% of adults ages 12 and older, and about 45 million adults in the U.S. alone.
This reminds me of the time I got herpes.
So those are just a few examples. I know there's a kind of broad strokes in relating just some of the Minifans and participants in the Miniverse. Just a pretty common ailment. Some common, some not so common. I've been doing the podcast for a little while, just kind of out there on my own. And it's it can be a little bit heady, a little nerdy. So I want feedback. I want to try and make it better. I want to try and make it a little bit funnier. Like I said, I'd love to do some collaborations, or if anybody has suggestions, please let me know. It's something I kind of want to have fun with. At the same time, hopefully it can help educate and maybe promote just a little bit of public health as well here in the Miniverse to our Minifans. So hopefully you'll take a listen to some of the pods that we put up going forward in the future. Like I said, you can reach out to me. I'm on Twitter at MakeMeSickPod, and I'm also, I can be reached via email at youmakemesickpod@gmail.com. Always looking for feedback, always looking for any kind of suggestions from anybody. So hopefully my introduction into the Miniverse, the Minahan universe is accepted. If not, hey, give me shit too. I can take it, I don't mind. But looking to hopefully go forward here, have a little bit of fun, and hopefully spread a little bit of knowledge as well. All right, guys, take care, and I'm going to leave you with a little bit of advice. Just remember to always wash your hands. Hand hygiene saves lives, and it can also prevent the spread of disease.
I got a fever.
It rubs the lotion on its skin. It does this whenever it's told.